Emily Carter wasn't the type to just vanish. 17 years old, a high school senior with a promising future, she had everything to look forward to. That's what made her disappearance so terrifying. At 9:45 p.m., Emily sent a text to her mother. "On my way home, love you." She had spent the evening at her best friend Chloe's house, studying for an upcoming calculus exam. The plan was simple. Leave Chloe's around 9:30, take the familiar route home, and be in bed by 10. But Emily never made it. By 10:30 p.m., her mother, Linda Carter, started to worry. Emily was always punctual. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. Messages remained unread. By 11 p.m., Linda called Chloe, her voice shaking. "She left a while ago," Chloe said, her tone shifting from confusion to fear. "She should be home by now." The police were called at 11:27 p.m. Officers initially suggested she might have run away. Teenagers did that sometimes. Maybe she had met up with someone, gotten distracted. But Linda refused to believe it. Something was wrong. Then came the discovery that sent shockwaves through the quiet town of Brookhaven. Emily's silver Toyota Corolla was found abandoned on the side of Ashford Road, a desolate, tree-lined stretch barely 3 miles from her home. The driver's side door was wide open, the engine was still running. Her phone sat on the driver's seat, screen cracked as if it had been dropped in a hurry. There was no sign of Emily, no blood, no footprints leading into the woods, just a running car and an eerie, unnatural silence. Detective Ryan Maddox arrived at the scene, scanning the area with a practiced eye. Something about this wasn't right. People didn't just step out of their cars and disappear into the night. Then he saw it. A single set of tire tracks, different from Emily's, imprinted in the dirt just behind her vehicle. Someone had stopped here. And just like that, Emily Carter became missing. The first 48 hours after a disappearance are the most critical. And in Emily Carter's case, every passing second felt like a countdown to something worse. Detective Ryan Maddox wasted no time. He stood at the scene of Emily's abandoned car, taking in every detail. The unlocked driver's door, the phone on the seat, the tire tracks that weren't hers. No sign of a struggle, no obvious bloodstains. But Maddox knew better than to assume she left willingly. By sunrise, the search was in full force. Officers combed through the dense woods surrounding Ashford Road, their flashlights cutting through the morning fog. Bloodhounds sniffed the area for a scent. Volunteers joined in, calling Emily's name, their voices swallowed by the endless trees. Nothing. No footprints, no torn clothing, no sign of where she could have gone. Maddox turned to Emily's family and friends, searching for clues in her personal life. Her mother, Linda, sat at the kitchen table, gripping her coffee cup like a lifeline. Her eyes were swollen, her hands shaking. She wasn't in trouble, Linda insisted. She wasn't unhappy, she was coming home. Chloe, Emily's best friend, was equally adamant. "We were just studying," she said. "She didn't seem scared or weird, she was fine." A girl with a perfect life doesn't just vanish without reason. So what happened between 9:45, when she texted her mom, and 10 p.m., when her car was found? Then came the first real lead. Maddox's team pulled surveillance footage from a gas station near Ashford Road. The timestamp read 9:51 p.m. The footage showed Emily's Toyota Corolla stopping at a red light. A dark SUV pulled up beside her. The camera angle wasn't great, but something about the way the SUV lingered, how the brake lights flickered as if the driver hesitated. Maddox's instincts screamed that this was important. The light turned green. Emily's car didn't move. The SUV disappeared from the frame, but by the time the next car pulled up, Emily's driver's door was open. Whatever happened, it happened fast. Maddox exhaled sharply. This wasn't just a missing person case. This was an abduction. 3 days after Emily Carter vanished, her mother's phone buzzed with an incoming message. "Mom, I'm okay. Don't look for me." Linda Carter's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as she read the words over and over again, willing them to make sense. Her daughter, missing for 72 agonizing hours, was suddenly reaching out? Heart pounding, Linda called Detective Ryan Maddox. Within minutes, the message was traced to a cell tower 40 miles away in the rural outskirts of Scranton. It was a lead, but an unsettling one. Maddox had seen this before. Kidnappers sometimes sent texts from a victim's phone to throw off investigators. If Emily had really sent the message, why didn't she say where she was? Why tell them not to look? "She didn't write this," Lindy whispered, her voice shaking. "Emily wants to come home." Maddox agreed, and when they checked Emily's phone records, the evidence backed it up. Her phone had never left Brookhaven. Someone had sent the message remotely, likely using a third-party service or cloning software. It was a deliberate misdirection designed to waste time and lead the investigation astray. But it had the opposite effect. Now Maddox was sure of one thing: someone had taken Emily, and that person was watching. The search team expanded its efforts, scouring the area near the Scranton cell tower where the text had been traced. Officers knocked on doors, questioning residents. Had anyone seen a silver Toyota Corolla that night? A girl matching Emily's description? No one had. Then, in a stroke of luck, a highway patrol officer came forward with a report. On the night of Emily's disappearance, around 10:15 p.m., an SUV had been seen speeding north on Route 6 toward the Scranton area. The vehicle matched the one from the gas station surveillance footage. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. Whoever had taken Emily had planned this carefully. They had control over her phone. They knew how to mislead the police. And worst of all, they weren't done playing games. Image prompt for Chapter 3. A close-up of a smartphone screen displaying a text message. "Mom, I'm okay. Don't look for me." The phone is shaking in a trembling hand, the background slightly blurred to show an anxious woman gripping the device. The dim glow of the screen illuminates her distressed face. The atmosphere is tense, filled with uncertainty. Was this really Emily? Or was someone else pulling the strings? 7 days had passed since Emily Carter vanished. The media had caught wind of the case, and her face was now plastered on news stations and social media. The words "missing teenager" scrolled across TV screens, accompanied by a smiling yearbook photo. A painful contrast to the grim reality. Then, on the morning of the 8th day, a call came in that changed everything. A hiker had been trekking through the Appalachian foothills when he noticed something unusual, something half buried beneath the dirt. It was a purse. Emily's purse. Detective Ryan Maddox arrived at the scene within the hour. The purse was scuffed, as if it had been thrown from a moving car. Inside, he found Emily's ID, some loose cash, and a gas station receipt. The receipt was dated the night she disappeared, timestamp 10:03 p.m. Maddox's pulse quickened. If Emily had been at that gas station, maybe there was footage. His team pulled surveillance video from the store. The footage was grainy, the camera positioned high above the cash register. But there, standing at the counter, was Emily. Her body language was tense. She glanced over her shoulder twice. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood a man wearing a baseball cap, his face mostly obscured. Maddox zoomed in, looking for anything distinctive, and then he saw it. A tattoo? Peeking out from under the man's sleeve were 3 interlocking rings, a symbol Maddox recognized from an old case file. His stomach turned. The tattoo belonged to Daniel Graves, a man with a long history of criminal activity. He had been questioned in the disappearances of 2 other women, but there had never been enough evidence to arrest him. Both women had vanished without a trace. And now Emily was missing too. Maddox clenched his jaw. This wasn't random. Graves had done this before, and if they didn't find Emily soon, she might not have much time left. Detective Ryan Maddox had seen the name before: Daniel Graves. A ghost in the system, suspected in 2 disappearances but never convicted, a man who knew how to cover his tracks, leaving behind just enough mystery to avoid capture. But this time he had made a mistake. The gas station footage had caught his tattoo, the same 3 interlocking rings described by a woman who barely escaped him 5 years ago. The woman, a former waitress named Laura Finch, had reported being followed by Graves after leaving work late one night. She was lucky. She got away. Emily Carter wasn't as fortunate. Maddox dug into Graves's past. He had a criminal record stretching back 20 years. Assault, harassment, even suspected abduction, though nothing ever stuck. His last known address was an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town. A place police had searched before, but never found anything. This time they came prepared. By nightfall, Maddox and his team surrounded the property. The house was dark, its windows covered with grime. The front door creaked as they entered, their flashlights cutting through the dust-filled air. The place reeked of decay. In the living room, an old recliner sat facing a television filled with static. Dishes with rotting food were stacked on the table. But the real horror was in the basement. Maddox's flashlight swept across the cement walls, landing on a rusted metal box shoved under a workbench. He pried it open, his breath catching as he sifted through its contents. It said, dozens of them, belonging to young women, some missing, some presumed dead. At the very bottom of the box lay something unmistakable, a silver charm bracelet. Linda Carter had described it perfectly, a delicate chain with tiny star-shaped charms. Emily's bracelet? His grip tightened. She had been here. Maybe she still was. Then, a sound. A faint creak from the floor above. Maddox motioned for his team to move. Guns drawn, they climbed the stairs, but when they reached the second floor, the bedroom was empty. The only thing left was an open window. Daniel Graves was gone. And somewhere out there, so was Emily. Detective Ryan Maddox had been in law enforcement long enough to know that time was the enemy. Every hour that passed meant Emily Carter was further from being found, further from being saved. But now he had a name, a suspect, a trail. Daniel Graves had fled his farmhouse, but he had left behind something critical, Emily's bracelet. It proved she had been there, but it also raised a terrifying question. Was she still alive? Then came the break they needed. Traffic cameras had picked up Graves' SUV traveling north on Route 6, just hours after the farmhouse raid. Maddox's team traced the vehicle's path, and a final sighting placed it near a hunting cabin deep in the Pennsylvania woods. A place isolated, a place no one would hear a girl scream. Maddox and his team moved in under the cover of darkness. The cabin was barely more than a shack, weathered wood, boarded-up windows, and a single porch light flickering in the night. The SUV was parked outside. Graves was here. The SWAT team positioned themselves at the doors and windows. Maddox took a breath and gave the signal. Bang! The door burst open. Flashlights swept the room, illuminating a filthy mattress, chains bolted to the floor, and a chair with rope still tied around the arms. And in the far corner, Emily. She was curled up, her wrists bruised from restraints, her face pale and streaked with dried tears. When Maddox called her name, she barely reacted at first, as if she couldn't believe she was being rescued. Then, a noise, a rustling from behind the cabin. Rafe's. The chase was short. Maddox tackled him just as he reached the tree line, slamming him into the damp earth. For the first time, the monster who had stolen Emily Carter had nowhere left to run. As Graves was dragged away, he muttered something under his breath. 3 chilling words. There are more. The case was closed, but Maddox knew Emily's rescue was just the beginning. Graves had taken before, and if his words were true, there were still others out there, waiting to be found. But tonight, Emily was safe.